Hello, welcome back. This is episode 4 of Widows Speak. I'm your host, Dr. Phyllis Edwards, and basically everybody calls me Dr. E. So as we get rolling a little bit further on, we're going to have a time when you'll be able to call in or message us for your questions, and we'll be able to answer you and have a little bit more participation from audience, because obviously that's the point. That's why, I hoped that we would do this so that we could reach as many people as possible that are going through really a trauma. A loss of a primary person in your life. In my case, it was my husband. We were married for 50 years. He was my friend. He was everything to me. He was the father of my children, and I knew that this was going to happen. We all know, when you take the vows till death do you part, but you never think about it. And nobody ever prepares you for what is going to happen, just as a fact of life. Later on in life, you're busy, you're going through life, you're raising your children, you're having your ups, you're having your downs. But, if you commit to one another, you are together, and that person is your primary partner, and the person that even if you're out individually doing things, that's still the person that you're going to come home to talk about what happened, during the course of that day, or how you felt about this particular situation, or how do we move forward. I've recently started to do different kinds of things that, again, I've never done alone. And each time I do something, quite frankly, it's a little bit scary, even though, as an individual person, I'm lucky, I'm blessed, I'm grateful to have had parents that believed that education was important. And, I strove and worked very hard to reach the top of my profession as a school superintendent. And if you're going to do that, you're going to have to be an independent thinker, independent minded, but you still have that other side of you that has been developed as you've grown up with this particular person, and then all of a sudden they're not there for you. They're gone, and you find yourself alone. So you do things. And I wrote something as I was going through the mountains of paperwork, and it is overwhelming. And I've talked about this in one of our episodes, and it just was overwhelming. Every time I went down to sit to do it, I could feel myself getting really stressed and tense. And invariably, no matter who I called about whatever, at some point, I was going to end up breaking down and crying. And some people were really nice about it. That's fine. Thank you very much for you that are out there doing that. And other people, this is their job, and they just go on. But in that time, I ended up kind of jotting down my notes, and I wrote down all the things that I thought would be of help to people. And I actually called it the Widow's Guide, and it's practical information. And I hope that at some point, if you're going through something, or even if maybe you're a child, or, something hasn't happened yet, but you're not sure, how this works, I would recommend maybe at some point, you can get in touch with us here, and we could perhaps get this out to you so that you will have it as some sort of a guide. I'm sure you'll get other great information. There's many, many books out there, but this is not from a book. This was from experience and from the heart. I also want to say that if you missed any of the episodes, you would be able to go back and find them. You'll find them in many of the major outlets, Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok. There's quite a few places that you can find us. And again, what we're doing is called Widows Speak. I named it that for a reason, because your gut reaction, and then if you look at history, what happens with widows? Widows, that it's people have this picture in their mind of what widows are. And they're even back in the days of the Bible, and they were marginalized. They were often taken advantage of. Their husband was their means to everything. That's not the way it is anymore, but you will find many, many women, widows, going through things like they're not sure if they're going to lose their house or not. They don't know how they're going to get insurance because everything was provided. And maybe their person was a military person and there's more hoops to jump through. But there are a lot of things that these ladies are going through. And I'm hoping that there's other people out there that are listening to this that are maybe movers and shakers in their organizations that can start thinking about the fact that in your little community, there are a lot of women that are in this situation that could use help. It might be very practical help. Maybe you have a teen group and you're looking for something that they can do. Trust me, we don't want to ask for help. We don't want to call people to always come in to do simple things that maybe, we know that our husband did at a time, but now it's just us. Yes, you can learn how to put pictures up, but I don't know how to put up a fan. So, there are things that perhaps if you're in a community and you want to get involved and you find out, that somebody needs your help and you offer it, I think there's a lot of people that would be very, very grateful and willing, because they also find that they don't have the money, the income that they had. This is another, pump on the head. You're going to lose half your income, and you don't realize this. So wherever you're living, you have to look at every single thing. And I think it's very important that people will just recognize that maybe you're in a church. Maybe you'd like to set up a couple of pews for folks. Maybe you're in a club and they do dinner dances. I love to dance, but I don't have anybody to dance with anymore. And even that, forget that. But maybe you just want to go to dinner, but it's awkward. You go in and you're by yourself and everybody's there in couples, and some people are really welcoming and some people aren't. But I ask you to think about that. Is there something maybe that you could do, some small thing in your own little organization that could make people that have lost a significant other really feel like you're welcoming and comforting? And you know what? We do welcome you here. We do want you here, and you are valuable, and we want to hear what you have to say, because some of us are just not ready to sit, at the end of the table and keep our mouths shut, even though honestly, that's what you feel like. Even sometimes with the people that are closest to you, you feel like, well, you're not supposed to do this, or you're not supposed to have an opinion. You're still a living, breathing person, and you still have to go on with your life. So I would say just think about that and give that a moment to kind of percolate. So in episode 4, we are now going to continue or have another opportunity to talk to an actual grief counselor. And her name is Iola Burnsed, and she is a wonderful person that has literally gone through many, many types of loss and really has found her calling and her ministry in going through the training, which was, as she told us last time, which was pretty difficult. And she found, as she was going through this training for this particular program that has a curriculum, that she actually had her own aha moments and times when she said, oh, now I get it. Because as she told me, we're not taught how to deal with loss. We're not taught how to deal with trauma. And so we get stuck. So I want to introduce Iola and ask her to tell us more about what she does and repeat a little bit of, how you came to this and why you think it's just the perfect thing for you and why you think it helps so many people. And then I have some more questions that I want to get out on the table. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's my honor and pleasure to be here. It's my honor to be able to speak to people that I know are grieving. Yes, I started my business doing grief recovery almost a year ago. Really, I was looking for, I had just left a job that I loved, but I just felt like God was calling me to something better, something deeper.
Right.
And, I just wanted to finish my days well. So I started the Valley of Vision grief coaching services. It's based on the grief recovery method. You can find out more about the grief recovery method at thegriefrecoverymethod.com. It's nothing new. Grief recovery method has been around for over 45 years.
Wow, that long.
They're on 6 of the 7 continents. They have multiple books printed in over 20 languages. There are a lot of resources right there on the website. If you are listening to this and you're not in the Flagler County area, you can go to the Grief Recovery Method website. You can look for a grief recovery specialist in your area by either typing in city, state, zip code. If you know someone who does it, you can search by name. I am listed as a counselor for them. I provide services through Zoom. I do private sessions, one-on-one. I do group sessions, and I also do speaking engagements.
And that's great because that's a time for you to reach broad brush a lot of people, and somebody there, I guarantee you, is going to say, that's something that I really ought to look into. I wondered because, with my situation, my husband was sick for quite a while. And at about the last 3 years, you're pretty sure something's going to happen, but you just kind of, again, keep going. Most widows are, in fact, take care. They're caregivers. They take care of their husbands, getting them what they need, going to doctors, listening when maybe they're not listening. My husband was the eternal optimist, so if he would go by himself and come home, all I'd ever hear was, everything's great, everything's wonderful, I'm fine. Well, when you go, you're hearing things that you need to hear. But what I didn't think of was, because, you go through your own sadness, and you, even at that time, you really are kind of, I don't know if there's such a thing, but you're sort of in a pre-grieving state. Nothing compared to what happens when you're actually in it, through by yourself. But you do grieve. You grieve for the loss of the life that you had. Do you think it would be helpful to people that maybe were in this situation, kind of to come and talk or listen to something or read about this method before something actually happens? Might that help them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I do a lot of work with dementia clients. So, when you have a loved one that has dementia,
Yes.
It almost feels like a loss twice.
Right.
Because when they lose mental capacity and they don't recognize you, they can't call you by name. So you feel like you've already lost them.
Right.
And then when they actually pass, it's that
Again.
feeling of loss all over again, and it's a little different. Yes. So I would highly recommend everyone, whether you've had a traumatic loss or not, we all need to educate ourselves. And so, yes, the answer is definitely yes. You should, if you know something like that is coming, by all means, you can prepare. And then you can even come again after.
When you're in the midst of it, of
Right.
that different feeling, that different kind of experience that you're having.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. So we talk about loss, and we talk about trauma, and we talk about grief, and we talk about death. But can you kind of flesh those out for us? Because you do with different people different things. So as you're going through something like this, you know, you don't even realize maybe the different losses that you've had that have really, you know, created an arrow, if you will, to your heart. So could you talk a little bit about like the different types of loss?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, obviously, when you think of loss, death is what comes to mind first. And yes, that is something we all grieve. Loss could also include divorce, financial hardships, loss of your health, any type of depression, anxiety disorders, trauma, PTSD, abuse, spiritual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. If you just see someone who is always angry, that's grief. That's unresolved grief.
Turned inward.
Yeah. So that's another thing that I love about the grief recovery method is the method works for all types of these losses. I don't have to be an expert on divorce and an expert on death. And, you know, the method that we use is what handles all these types of loss. And it works.
It works. So I often wondered about PTSD. And, you know, you hear the term, and you mostly hear it with, you know, veterans and folks that have actually been in combat and things like that. God bless them and all. But I also wonder because I can, as the wife, I can literally, and now the widow, I can literally recall specific events that were very, very traumatic. There were many, many. And when my husband was here, you know, at times when we would talk, I would say, we'd talk about that, and he'd say, I don't remember, like, God is good, right? Like, I would sit there and watch whatever it was they were doing to him, you know, a bone marrow transplant. I didn't get to watch the whole thing, but I knew enough about what was going on in terms of what he had to experience. You know, I didn't get to watch the brain surgery, but I saw the after. I saw all the afters, very up close and personal. And there are times when I could just be thinking about nothing. You know, maybe I'm walking my dog. And all of a sudden, that kind of thing just hits me. And I could tell you everything that went on. You know, I used to say that I think I could sit for my medical boards because I feel like I went through every major system. You know, we went through the brain surgery, there was, you know, pancreatitis, there was leukemia, you know, there were so many different things that I, through him, personally experienced. And because I wanted to help him, learned as much as I could about it. But do you think that widows, depending on their situation, you know, might be experiencing something like that?
Absolutely.
Like that
That's
kind of
definitely.
flashback and...
Yeah. I mean, you're always going to have triggers. You're going to have those moments where you're ambushed by grief. It comes out of nowhere. You hear a song or something on the radio that triggers it. And it can really apply to any of these situations.
And of course, all of us have been told to look for signs, and you know that it might be a bird, it might be, you know, a particular song or something like that. And then when you don't get them, if you don't get them, you're pretty disappointed. If you do get them, sometimes they can trigger, as you say, you know, that whole emotional thing that goes on, and it can be tough. When do you think, is there a particular time frame, like that you should think that, it's time to recover? Or again, is it different for everybody? Try to do something to help you out of the hole.
Yeah. So, any time is a good time. If you don't know how to deal with grief, then you need to learn how to deal with grief. Otherwise, you're going to deal with it perhaps in unhealthy ways, which could lead to other issues. So, I would say, as soon as you realize, wow, I don't know what to do with this, or I don't know how to get out of this feeling, I feel stuck. Is this ever going to end? When you find yourself asking those types of questions, or if you're just to a point where you say, I don't want to feel like this anymore.
Can't take it anymore.
I can't take this. Yeah, I need help.
Right. So in education, we learn that if you've had trauma, if a child has had trauma one time, it increases their chances of not doing well in school, possibly not even graduating. But over the years, and I was an educator for many, many years, it was not just for children like one time of trauma. You find there's multiple traumas. And boy, each time there's another episode trauma. And it could be much more severe for some than for others. We all know that story, and it's sad. But what it does to the child, I just, in their life, in the expectancy of how, successful they might be, or how it does have a huge effect. And yet, I think so many educators don't really have that sense of it, that knowledge. They're also, I'm sure, feel like, gosh, I'm trying to teach reading, language, math, and social studies, and yet I've got, 25, 30 kids, and if I had to look at it today versus back when I first started, maybe back when I first started, it might be a smaller percentage, or there would be those that might hide it, right? But now it's almost as if a good portion of the students that you're dealing with have major, major, major issues, which have built up over time.
Yes.
I wondered, with what you do, do you counsel children at all? Or what would you suggest?
Yeah. So I do not counsel children. I counsel 18 and above.
Okay.
However, I would highly recommend the parents come and see me. Typically, if the child is struggling like that, it's because the parent doesn't know either. The parent doesn't have the tools to give them. I have parents that call me quite frequently, especially about teenagers and things nowadays. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to help them. So I always recommend that the parent come in, go through the course. It's 7 weeks. You learn how to do it. And then you can go back and help your child, because no one loves your child more than you.
Or knows them better.
Exactly. So come learn about it yourself. It's going to help you in whatever you've dealt with in your life. And then you'll be able to turn around and help your child.
And as you say, some of those unhealthy things are things that I think those of us that may be working, in some groups with children, with adolescents, with teens, obviously we're seeing that, they're not just turning to this or that because, oh boy, this is, fun. There's usually some deep issue.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to resolve it, and they don't know where to turn. And so, this is a way to kind of mask the pain.
Yeah.
And yet all they're doing is setting up for, something worse. But, we all know, having been, young ourselves, you think you can get over anything, right? You think nothing's ever going to happen to you. But I could see that, even with my two children who were freshman and sophomore. I didn't know really how to deal with that part of it when, in fact, my husband was making a supreme sacrifice to go undergo this bone marrow transplant, which basically they kill off your cells, everything, and then bring you back. I mean, it is quite something. And there were people younger than him that did not survive it, but it was a long haul. And when he left, what I didn't really catch was that he left. You know, that he was gone. He was in Texas. He was in MD Anderson, one of the best places. I did my research. But beyond that, my two kids, really, if you think about it, at a very tough time. Youngsters, young girls, when they should be attaching to their dad, lost that.
Yeah.
And yet I was so busy, if you will, with keeping a job, making sure that he was okay and everything was taken care of there, you know, making sure they had food and that their home was safe, you know, doing all the things, dealing with insurance companies. I was so busy doing all of that that was something that maybe and certainly I should have known better, should have paid more attention to. It was kind of unfair. And I'm sure that you see that probably in, you know, just the people that you talk to that are, would you say 16, 17 and older? Maybe they get to that point where they're telling you this was something that happened to me younger in life. Would you say that's the case?
That's very common.
It is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so too. But this is really something that we don't want to, in our culture, I don't think we talk enough about. People need help, and they can't often always get out of things on their own, even if you've done it before. So, you know, I would encourage you, even if you've never thought you're going to do anything like this ever, I would encourage you to think about it, because otherwise you remain stuck and you do still have a life to lead. And, you know, you want to be a little bit happy and productive. So for now, we want to thank you for your time and your expertise. And I want to thank you personally. You're a great person. And I want to tell you that we're going to sign off, and that God has for you beauty for ashes, and that He is close to the brokenhearted. And we are going to continue to have experts to come in and talk to you about these things that you need to know. So signing off for The Widows Speak, Phyllis Edwards, Dr. E. Thanks for being with us.
There we go.
Okay.